From unpredictable destructions of enormous structures to underwater adventures and incredible incidents in the sky, today we will immerse ourselves in a series of the most astonishing and shocking stories that are simply impossible to forget. We will uncover secrets that give you goosebumps and show moments that hardly anyone would believe if they had not been captured on camera. Get ready for a journey where each subsequent scene is a separate episode of an exciting film about the unpredictability of our reality. Stay until the very end because there is so much amazing ahead. In the world of extreme entertainment, there are always daredevils ready to test where human capabilities end. One day, two absolutely fearless individuals decided to put their names in the records by performing the highest base jump ever heard of. This took place from the top of the famous Burj Khalifa Tower, whose height reaches approximately 2,700 and more feet. Base jumping itself is already more than risky, since jumps are usually made from limited heights, bridges, antennas, cliff ledges. But at that moment, the daredevils not only made a simple jump, but they put on wingsuits and leaped from a dizzying height comparable to a helicopter flight. They were in the air for just under 1 minute before deploying their parachutes, reaching impressive speeds. Unique footage showed how these bold adrenaline seekers literally glided past the luxurious skyscrapers of Dubai, managing to control their trajectory with precision. Experts note, besides courage, such a stunt requires meticulous training. Any mistake could have been extremely costly. A curious fact, similar records inspired the entire extreme sports world, and now fans of such flights hold entire festivals where the main goal is to test what other limits human will is ready to overcome. On one of the warm days when everything was going its usual way, a Buddhist temple in Thailand decided to renew its buildings by demolishing the dilapidated parts of the complex. At first glance, it should have been a routine and completely safe job, since experienced builders with a crawler crane arrived on site. But events took an undesirable turn. During the dismantling of the old cremation furnace, the equipment suddenly began to sway as if it had lost its balance. The slightest error in the braking system, and the crane tilted, collapsing its multi-ton mass onto the sacred halls of the temple. The huge boom passed through the roof, breaking the support structures and carrying away part of the shrine. It was a real miracle that none of the monks or workers were injured. For local believers, everything that happened was not just an incident, but a genuine spiritual shock. After all, such an accident in the eyes of parishioners looks like an act of desecration of a holy place. As the investigation later showed, the cause of the collapse lay in the failure to follow basic safety rules. In Thailand, such incidents are not uncommon because the rapid pace of construction sometimes outstrips the strictest regulations. The nuns and monks themselves see this as a sign that one must treat religious structures with utmost care and deliberation. Many aviation enthusiasts love to experiment, carrying out takeoffs and landings in completely unprepared places. Thus, in a northern region of Sweden, an elderly pilot wanted to test the durability of his old biplane, Antonov An-2. This Soviet workhorse, nicknamed Anyushka, is indeed capable of handling landings and takeoffs on clearings and short strips. However, on that ill-fated day, the pilot chose a clearing so short that the plane simply did not have enough runway to gain critical speed. When the vintage Antonov finally lifted off the ground, it reached the tree line in just a few seconds and grazed the treetops. As a result of the collision, the plane rolled over and crashed back onto the ground. Luckily, the iron structure remained more or less intact, and the pilot escaped with scratches and a slight fright. Anyushka also got lucky. The repair turned out to be possible. Later, specialists explained that despite the sturdiness of these aircraft, natural conditions like gusty wind or an overly short runway can be fatal. Who would have thought that one of Britain's most advanced combat machines, the ultra-modern fighter jet F-35, would end up at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea? One day, when a standard takeoff was being carried out from the aircraft carrier Queen Elizabeth, something went wrong. The plane was supposed to confidently accelerate and take to the air, but did not reach the required speed. Realizing the danger, the pilot ejected and landed in the water, while the precious bird, worth more than $100 million, went straight to the depths of the sea. For the British military, this was a heavy blow to their reputation, as the F-35 is considered an example of technological superiority. While London tried to hide the incident from close scrutiny, eyewitnesses on the deck, smartphone in hand, did their part. The footage quickly spread across the internet. Later, experts suggested that there might have been pilot error or mechanical failure, but no official detailed report followed. This event undoubtedly forced the British fleet to reconsider safety measures and thoroughly inspect such jets, since reputation and millions of dollars were at stake. Hot air balloons have always seemed romantic. A slow flight over fields and forests, a quiet drift among the clouds. But few people consider that the slightest gust of wind and an unfortunate turn of events can turn into a real disaster. Once in Wisconsin, a group of tourists set off in a balloon to enjoy the scenery. At first, everything went peacefully, until gusty winds began pulling the balloon directly toward high-voltage lines. The burner operator tried to adjust the course, but the moment was lost. The envelope touched the wires, sparks flew, and the balloon almost instantly ignited like a giant torch. Everyone in the basket experienced true horror as the fabric began to melt and fiery droplets fell downward. Astonishingly, the people managed to land without serious injuries. They were saved by the pilot's timely action of shutting off the burner, so at least the basket did not catch fire entirely. However, for the witnesses, it became a symbol of how an innocent outing can turn into a dramatic incident in mere moments. Interestingly, some professional balloon pilots emphasize when you follow all the rules and know how to read the weather, the risk is minimal. But nature, as they say, loves to spring surprises, and experience does not always help avoid them. The planet's climate is becoming ever more unpredictable, and when we hear the word storm, most of us imagine strong winds, heavy rain, and thunder. But sometimes a photo or video reveals the colossal destructive power of nature in all its glory, making even the toughest individuals shudder. In one amateur recording taken from inside a car, you can see how in a matter of seconds a real hurricane begins. The wind tears branches off trees and hurls debris into the air, while the sky darkens as though covered by a heavy shroud. It creates the impression that you are standing before a giant storm monster. Usually, we see only general footage on the news, but when we come across such a personal, almost intimate video, suddenly everyone realizes how close the destructive force of nature can come. It vividly shows that sometimes only a surviving camera testifies to the unimaginable rampage of nature. Gigantic dams have served people for centuries, storing water, generating electricity, and even holding industrial waste. But if one of them collapses, the consequences can be truly dreadful. That is what happened in Brazil, in the Brumadinho area, when the structure holding a massive volume of iron ore processing waste suddenly failed. A mixture of silt and chemical reagents, thick and toxic, rushed downward in a giant wave comparable to a storm tsunami. On its path were administrative buildings, work sheds, and entire residential neighborhoods. Unfortunately, hundreds of people lost their lives, and the region's infrastructure was severely damaged. An investigation revealed that such dams in Brazil are often built using outdated technology, where wet waste is held back only by earthen embankments. And although officials had assured that the structure was stable before the tragedy, reality proved otherwise. Experts say that with current industrial growth, irresponsibility and the pursuit of profit can lead to such disasters even more often. Scientists urge strict monitoring and alternative disposal methods, since any calculation error can cause a tragedy of epic proportions. Africa's savannas are famous for their relentless struggle for survival, where lions, being kings, spare no one. But sometimes nature presents scenes that make us question the usual notions about predators. In one of Tanzania's national parks, a young wildebeest became separated from its herd and ended up surrounded by a pack of hyenas. It seemed that in another moment the doomed little creature would become their dinner. But suddenly, out of the bushes appeared a huge lion. Instead of finishing off the easy prey, the king of beasts unexpectedly chased the hyenas away and literally stood guard next to the shivering calf, protecting it from another attack. This contradicts all the rules of the food chain. Some scientists believe something in the lion's brain might have triggered. Perhaps the calf reminded him of his own cubs. Others think it was just a rush of hormones or a perception error. Whatever the case, the little wildebeest survived and managed to slip away when its protector was momentarily distracted. Such cases are very rare, but show how complex and sometimes touching life in the wild can be. In late autumn of 2014, the company Orbital Sciences was preparing for the routine launch of cargo to the International Space Station. Their rocket Antares seemed certain to deliver a capsule with provisions and equipment for the station's crew without any issues. But a few seconds after launch, the entire system failed, lighting up the sky with a gigantic fireball. The video footage instantly spread worldwide, shocking even seasoned space enthusiasts. Tons of debris rained down on the nearby areas of the launch site in the state of Virginia. And although no personnel were harmed, the project incurred huge losses. The cargo with valuable materials and, most importantly, the company's reputation were destroyed in a single moment. Later, experts determined that the cause was a malfunction in the turbo pump of the engine. The next step was to equip Antares with other engines to avoid a repeat of such a catastrophe. This incident, once again, underscored how unpredictable space is. Even with modern technology, the smallest error can lead to a fatal explosion, costing millions of dollars and months of intensive work. An interesting nuance. For many people, it served as a harsh reminder that space exploration is not only about romance, but also involves huge risks. Accidents force engineers to constantly rethink designs and safety systems. One family in the state of Massachusetts, after a harsh winter storm, decided to cut down a large elm tree on their property themselves to clear the area. It would seem simple enough. You take a chainsaw, make a cut, and the tree should fall in the chosen direction. But in reality, everything went out of control. The homeowner, lacking sufficient experience, began sawing the trunk, planning for the tree to fall onto a nearby frozen pond. Suddenly, a loud crack was heard, indicating that the main support of the trunk had broken unevenly. And so the massive elm toppled directly onto the house. The filmed destruction turned into a real nightmare. The tree smashed through the roof and the veranda, nearly knocking out the load-bearing beams. The greatest miracle was that no one was hurt. However, the repair cost the owners an astronomical sum, many times greater than the fee for a professional felling. This clearly serves as a warning. Sometimes it is cheaper and more sensible to hire an expert than to risk your own home and health. In one of the districts of the Chinese city of Chongqing, they decided to demolish a 5-story building by attaching a huge jackhammer to an excavator. The workers' plan was to break the main load-bearing columns, after which the building was supposed to settle neatly. But in reality, everything did not go according to plan. Once the excavator had substantially weakened the lower floor, and the operator seemed to anticipate the collapse, the building suddenly leaned and fell sideways with incredible speed. An instant cloud of dust arose, and the house nearly crushed the machine and its operator. Fortunately, the worker managed to back away at the last moment, so the excavator did not end up under tons of concrete. This case was a harsh lesson in how unpredictably a massive structure can collapse when the direction of the fall and the internal damage to the load-bearing beams are not fully calculated. According to statistics, such incorrect predictions sometimes lead to worker fatalities and cause damage to nearby buildings. Nowadays, engineers try to calculate demolition using computer models, but even they cannot guarantee 100% that the building will fall exactly as planned. It sounds incredible, but one day, cameras captured how a truck deliberately pushed an SUV onto the tracks right in front of an oncoming train. The warning signals were already lowered, and from behind, it seemed as though the truck intentionally drove into the rear of the passenger car, shoving it into the path of the locomotive. The driver and passengers of the SUV frantically tried to get out, with a railroad attendant trying desperately to help, waving his arms. It was like a thriller film. You could hear the growing horn, and the train was speeding closer. Fortunately, right before the collision, the driver managed to jump back into the car, and the SUV broke free of the rails at the very last moment, avoiding the crash. The truck, strangely enough, reversed and disappeared. The video shows that it even had a broken road sign stuck behind it. No one was hurt, but questions remained. Investigators suspect it may have been an intentional attempt to cause harm because the truck driver's explanation that the brakes failed seems unconvincing. He reversed without any problem immediately after the incident. One can only guess what was behind such a reckless act. The beginning of the year proved eventful in one small airport in Texas. The pilot of a light aircraft, a Cessna, decided not to spend time using the full runway and tried to take off with a windy cross direction. He assumed that the headwind would help generate the necessary lift, but an error in calculations turned into a disaster. When the Cessna started its roll, strong gusts of wind began pushing the tail to the side, and the plane started to bank before it had properly lifted off. Losing control, the pilot could no longer realign with the center line, and a few moments later, the plane crashed into a row of trees at the edge of the runway. A deafening crack, sparks, broken wings, all of it was caught on camera by eyewitnesses. Amazingly, the pilot escaped with minor injuries and was able to get out of the cockpit on his own, though the plane could not be repaired. Experts explained that the main cause was the rush syndrome, the desire to take off as quickly as possible without considering all the weather factors or using the main runway. For any surfing enthusiast, the mention of sharks brings unsettling thoughts. Yes, statistically, shark attacks are fairly rare, but the risk always exists, and professional surfer Mick Fanning from Australia faced this risk head-on. During one of the tournaments in South Africa, the waves were nearly perfect, and everyone was expecting spectacular maneuvers. Suddenly, a shadow appeared on camera underwater, and in a split second, Mick felt a powerful jolt on his board. A shark started attacking right on live broadcast. The athlete was saved by his lightning-fast reaction and the quick action of rescuers on jet skis. What is even more shocking is that 2 years later, Fanning found himself in a very similar situation at the same surf spot. Eventually, he announced that he was retiring from the sport, admitting that the stress he had experienced was too great. Of course, his fans understood. After 2 encounters of this kind, remaining calm in the water is no simple task. Many experts believe sharks can be attracted by the vibrations and splashes created by surfers, especially during competitions when dozens of people gather in a small area. Thus, sometimes big tournaments become a kind of magnet for sharks. When you look at a smooth road or a country lane, it is hard to imagine that at any moment the ground can literally open up beneath your feet, swallowing a person or a car. Nevertheless, this phenomenon, known as a sinkhole, is quite common in different parts of the world. In one Russian city, the driver of a cement truck was traveling along an ordinary road, unaware that there was a void beneath the asphalt. Suddenly, the front wheels dropped down and the cab tilted, almost disappearing underground. Fortunately, the driver was not injured. He managed to escape from the vehicle through a side window. It soon turned out that an old sewer tunnel ran under that part of the street, which had been corroded over time by groundwater. Engineers have been raising the alarm for years. If we do not monitor the condition of underground utilities, such sinkholes could become commonplace, threatening not only property, but also human lives. Alaska is a harsh land, where the ground seems eternal and unbreakable. Yet beneath the ice and permafrost lie vast reserves of methane. As the soil thaws, these gas bubbles escape to the surface, and sometimes a single spark is enough to create a natural torch. Two adventurers decided to test this on a frozen lake. They drilled a hole in the ice and held out a lighter. To their astonishment, a powerful burst of flame shot out, lighting up the surroundings like a lantern in the night. Usually, such flares are much smaller, but global warming is playing its part. The amount of methane under the ice is increasing, and the emissions are becoming more powerful. It is not only a spectacular sight, but also a warning about climate change. If the permafrost continues to thaw at an accelerated rate, it could affect the entire world. After all, methane is a gas that increases the greenhouse effect. And while tourists see these fiery fountains as a curiosity, scientists caution that behind this beauty lies a very dangerous process capable of changing Alaska's ecosystem and beyond. Would you have believed all these stories if there were no videos proving their reality? Sometimes what happens is so astonishing that it resembles scenes from Hollywood movies or bizarre dreams. But the facts speak for themselves. The world is full of surprises, and life often unfolds according to a script no screenwriter could imagine. That is all for now. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and give a like. And in the meantime, we offer you two of our top videos that have appeared on your screen.